Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little video that I personally found very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video by the boxing channel known as DontaesBoxingNation. Anyways, of course, for those of us that watched the most recent big fight in that of boxing between that of Devin the Dream Haney and Vasily High-Tech Lomachenko, a very competitive fight that a lot of people, of course, believed went to the wrong man. A lot of people personally believe that Lomachenko could have gotten the fight. I also believe that Lomachenko could have gotten the fight, but I don't really mind Devin Haney getting the decision personally because it was a close fight. There were certain rounds, in my view, that were quote unquote swing rounds, if you want to call them that. I did think that Lomachenko clearly, consistently was landing the more impactful punches of the two. I don't think that there's any doubt about that. But the question is, at least on your scorecard, is that do you believe that Lomachenko was active enough in order to win the fight? Which, of course, is always a little bit of a concern with Lomachenko, especially at this point in time. But, that was to be expected a little bit. He's 35 years old. He clearly was the smaller man between the two. I think Lomachenko pretty much did the best that he could. But the big question is now, where does Devin Haney go at this point in time in his career? And what I'll say is this, and I've been saying this about Devin Haney for a while. I said we're truly going to see how great Devin Haney is when he finally gets in the ring with someone that not only is very, very talented, but someone who can also handle that size. And Lomachenko, even though, of course, he did a very great job in countering some of Devin Haney's weaknesses, in my view, in that fight, there are certain other fighters, especially younger fighters out there, or bigger fighters, that might be able to counter it even better than what a Vasily Lomachenko did. Well, apparently there's been recent talks that Devin Haney might move up to the 140-pound weight division and fight that of Regis Prograis. And I've said this about Devin Haney for a very long time. We're going to see how truly great he actually is at the 140-pound weight division, because right now, especially if you're someone like a Teofimo Lopez or a Devin Haney or a Gervonta Tank Davis or a Shakur Stevenson, someone that, is not built like a Terrence Bud Crawford who could be a natural welterweight, that division, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be no easy runaways. You have Josh Taylor in that division. You have Teofimo Lopez in that division. You have Jose Ramirez, and you have Regis Prograis. Some of those guys, even though, of course, some of them have faults in their games, they are very dangerous, each and every single one of them. So it's going to be very interesting to see where Devin Haney goes at this point in time in his career. But Dante's Boxing Nation, he's going to talk about it. Let's tune in.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So since Gervonta Tank Davis hasn't shown any type of excitement or interest in fighting Devin Haney next, the way he showed interest in fighting Ryan Garcia, it's safe to say Gervonta Tank Davis, he does not want to fight Devin Haney next. Therefore, Devin Haney...
Well, hold on a minute, Dante. Doesn't this mean that Gervonta Tank Davis, this must mean that according to your standards, that Gervonta Tank Davis cannot be the quote-unquote face of boxing, according to your standards? Because according to your standards, it's not about the numbers, at least a lot of the times. It's about apparently willing to fight some of the most dominant black fighters. Because that's what your standards were with Canelo Alvarez, even though Canelo Alvarez has fought a lot of the great black fighters out there and a lot of the great fighters, period. Excuse me. This must mean that Gervonta Tank Davis, that he's a ducker. This must mean that he is avoiding Devin Haney. And this must mean that he is not one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in boxing, that he's not one of the three kings as you allege. Now, do I believe that we're going to hear any of that shit from Dante? Absolutely not. Which is once again why I go to say that a lot of the times when he talks about certain fighters, like a Tyson Fury or a Canelo or a Lomachenko or an Usyk or an Inoue, someone along these lines, he has a deeper narrative because he never keeps the same standards, which is whatever. I don't expect that from Dante, but don't tell me all this bullshit about, oh, Dante, he's just trying to tell the truth. No, that's not what Dante is about. Dante is basically old media, quote unquote, just turned the other way. Excuse me, just turned the other way.
He already said at the press conference he's thinking about either moving up to 140, trying out the division, and keeping his belts at 135, coming down just in case, he can get one of those fights later. The best fighter at 140 right now is hands down Regis Prograis. And Devin Haney,
No, the best fighter right now at 140 is Josh Taylor. But the reason why Dante's Boxing Nation is going with Regis Prograis is because Regis Prograis is a Black American fighter, and Dante is going to try to shoehorn any Black American fighter that he can as the best of the division. And don't get me wrong, Regis Prograis is definitely a very good fighter. He's going to give anyone that moves up to that weight division or anyone in that weight division a very great challenge. But I don't know if I'm going to go as far to call Regis Prograis the king of that weight division, because Josh Taylor is still undefeated. And on top of that, he's beaten the biggest names there. He beat Victor Postal, he beat Jose Ramirez, and he beat Regis Prograis. So I can't really call Regis Prograis the king of that division. That would be like after one controversial decision with Jamel Charlo over Brian Castano. That would be like me saying, well, Jamel Charlo, even though it was scored a draw and he hasn't lost his belts yet, Brian Castano, he's the new king of the division. Like that just doesn't make any sense. Josh Taylor is still the king of that weight division. Now, is it possible that Regis might eventually take it over? We'll see. But if Josh Taylor ends up beating Teofimo Lopez, which I personally predict that he will, in my personal view, then I don't think that there's really any debate about it. Josh Taylor will still be the king of that weight division. Josh Taylor has had too many wins. He's undefeated. He's clearly the most skilled fighter there. I don't think that there's really at least a great debate in my view that Regis Prograis right now is the best fighter there, especially when pretty much the biggest win that he has there is over that of a Jose Zepeda. So it is what it is.
It's revealed in a conversation he had with Regis Prograis that he contacted Eddie Hearn about making the fight, and Eddie Hearn still hasn't called him back. Regis Prograis, he had tagged Devin Haney in a message, and he said, "Yo, Devin, come pull up to the fight in New Orleans in 3 weeks. I got some ringside tickets for you. We're going to show you that Southern hospitality." So the Regis Prograis fight is a strong possibility for Devin Haney. But what I don't understand is if Devin Haney reached out to Eddie Hearn, why wouldn't Eddie Hearn get back to Devin Haney? Devin is a free agent, and Regis Prograis, he just signed with DAZN. And Regis Prograis, he has a fight coming up. So after he gets past that fight, there's nothing in the way. This is a very easy fight to make. Devin Haney, he still has a...
Well, it's an easy fight to make, but I don't know if it's really an easy option. And some people, they're not going to get what I mean by that. A lot of the times in boxing, you also have to think about the business side of things. Devin Haney right now, he's coming off the biggest win of his career. Whether you think it's controversial or not, he's coming off of the biggest win of his career in Vasily Lomachenko. And he could potentially get big wins over Gervonta, or I'm not going to say big wins, because nothing is confirmed. But he could get big fights with Gervonta Tank Davis, Shakur Stevenson, possibly some other guys. Why would you put him in the ring with someone like a Regis Prograis, where his profile is pretty much nowhere near any of those other fighters? And on top of that, he's fighting at a weight class that he's never fought at before, Devin Haney, that is, at 140, and he's fighting one of the most dangerous guys there. I just don't see that fight getting made next, just me personally. I just don't think that is good business if you're trying to promote Devin Haney, especially getting those super fights with Shakur Stevenson or Gervonta Tank Davis, which I believe they're probably going to try to set up first. But, we'll see, because that will also depend on how much longer Devin Haney is going to stay at that weight division.
Couple of options. He can still take the Shakur Stevenson fight. Even though the WBC, they took Shakur Stevenson's #1 mandatory spot and gave it to Vasily Lomachenko, Lomachenko's team, they said that they do not want a rematch with Devin Haney. So the WBC giving Lomachenko the #1 spot, it might not mean anything. But it's going to be really interesting.
I'm not sure if Lomachenko's team said they don't want a rematch, but I'd have to look at that.
To see in the next 2 months, because that's when we're most likely going to get an update on what direction.
Now, just to comment on it, do I believe that a rematch is going to make any difference between that of Vasily Lomachenko and Devin Haney? No, not unless Vasily Lomachenko were absolutely able to clearly whoop up on Devin Haney at least a good 9 rounds to 3. That's what he would have to do in order to win that fight. Like I already said, and I'm not necessarily trying to allege that the fight was a robbery, but Lomachenko is going to have to do more work in that fight than what Devin Haney is going to have to do. He's an Eastern European fighter. Those fighters are already a little bit harder to promote in the first place. Really, their only main appeal is that they're Caucasian and that they may be able to appeal to some of the Caucasian masses in that of other countries. But every other way, it's harder to promote them because they don't speak great English. They don't always have the greatest of charisma. like that of a Conor McGregor, who of course came from that of Ireland, because once again, they don't speak English very well, or it's not their first language. So, kind of like the Cuban fighters, they're not going to be the first fighters in line that a lot of people really want their fighters to get in the ring with. As I said for Lomachenko, it probably would be time for him to call it a career, unless he wants to fight guys probably like that of a Oscar Valdez, or, maybe a couple of other decent fights. Of course, a Gervonta Tank Davis and a Shakur Stevenson fights. Those fights would be very interesting. But like I said, they're not going to give you those fights unless you completely dominate those fighters. There's too much money for their stock later on down the line. And Lomachenko is a 35-year-old Eastern European fighter. It's not going to happen. It's pretty much like a lot of these Cuban fighters. It ain't going to happen.
And Lomachenko is going to go. Devin Haney is going to go. And Shakur Stevenson is going to go. When it comes to Lomachenko, I don't think he's going to change his mind when it comes to fighting Devin Haney again. I think Lomachenko was hurt to the body more than we know, and Devin Haney would do much better in a rematch. That was a different.
I don't think that Devin Haney would do much better in a rematch. I think that the fight would pretty much go along the same lines, because I think that Lomachenko, I think that he exposed some of Devin Haney's flaws, which is what I said he always has had. Not great head movement, very leaky defense, can be hit. But at the end of the day, Devin Haney was the bigger man. He did go to the body. Do I think that his game plan was more effective than that of Lomachenko's? Probably not, but once again, you could debate that either fighter ended up winning the fight. Like I said, I just don't personally believe that Lomachenko is going to get a decision over Devin Haney unless he knocks him down multiple times, or unless he clearly wins 9 rounds to 3. And even sometimes against certain fighters that they still want to push forward, they still will not give you the fight even if you win 9 rounds to 3. Take a look at that Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder fight. I thought Tyson Fury clearly, every time I've watched that fight, I always saw Tyson Fury clearly won 9 rounds in that fight, and they still scored it a draw. So like I said, 35 years old, you being an Eastern European fighter, someone that is pretty much losing their star appeal and has been losing their star appeal now for the past few years, someone that does not have much place now in the boxing narrative, you're not really going to win decisions over these highly promoted fighters that have great future potential unless you really, 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 really whoop their ass. That's what Lomachenko would have to do. And certain people may think that I'm making excuses, but not really. Like I said, there's a reason why certain decisions, they end up like that. For the Lomachenko-Devin Haney fight, the Josh Taylor-Jose Ramirez fight, for some of you that remember that fight, you'll remember that certain judges actually scored that fight about 7 rounds to 5, when that fight could have easily been scored 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3 in favor of Josh Taylor. Boxing knows a lot of the times, once again, which fighters have better future potential. Once again, people always come up with the saying that you got to beat the champion. It's not really about beating the champion. It's about beating the A side and beating the one who's worth more money, either at the current moment in time or for future potential. And if you don't, well, more than likely you're not going to get that decision. But it is what it is.
Different style that Devin Haney was fighting. And now that Devin already knows what works and what doesn't work against Lomachenko, he's going to beat Lomachenko much easier in a rematch. Just like Mayweather beat
I don't believe that at all. Because I don't think Devin Haney is Floyd Mayweather. I think that Devin Haney is a guy that tries to mimic Floyd Mayweather. I think that he's a very good fighter, but I don't think that he's a greatly skilled one. I think that his defense is just way too leaky. I think that his head movement, he has decent head movement, but it isn't A+. Sometimes his foot positioning is not great either. He was getting teed off a lot of times in that fight. I don't think that Devin Haney versus Lomachenko, I don't think there's any situation, at least with Lomachenko, even shows up at that point where that fight is much easier for Devin Haney. I just don't see it. Because all around, Lomachenko is a more skilled fighter than Devin Haney. It just is what it is. Now, Devin Haney, of course, to some of you, may have debatably pulled out the fight because maybe he was more active. Like I said, I thought personally that Lomachenko did enough to win, but I could understand if he gave it to Devin Haney as well. But I just don't see if a rematch were to happen. First of all, I don't see Lomachenko winning the rematch because, like I said, in order for him to win the rematch, he would literally have to dominate the fight so clearly. And I just don't know at this age and with his size, I'm not really sure if he ever in the first place would have been able to dominate Devin Haney like that, with his type of skill set and with his size. Maybe he could have done a little bit better, in his younger years, but it would have been always very difficult because Haney is a very smart fighter, although he does have some deficiencies. And on top of that, he outreaches him by, about around 6 inches. So it just is what it is.
Theo and Maidana in the rematch. Now, what I would really like to see now is Lomachenko versus Shakur Stevenson. I believe that's a 50-50 fight now, and it would be really...
That'd be a great fight, but... and I always said that I would rather see that fight than that of the Devin Haney fight because they're both more around the same size. But I'm not really sure where Lomachenko is going to go from here. It would be a very interesting fight, but Lomachenko in that fight would have to dominate Shakur Stevenson. He would have to dominate him in the same way that he dominated Gary Russell Jr. or the same way that he dominated other fighters, and I'm not sure if he can do that at this point in time in his career at 35 years old. That would be a great fight, though.
Be interesting to see how Shakur would do compared to how Devin Haney did with Lomachenko.
Because I'll say this, Lomachenko, in my view, even though he very clearly is still an A-grade fighter, you can tell that his stamina, it either A, has gone downhill a little bit because of age, or it's just gone downhill because you can tell that these bigger fighters, it takes more stamina to take them out. It might be a little bit of both. Because Lomachenko, of course, he didn't start off very strong against Teofimo Lopez either. Now, I thought that he started off way more strong against Devin Haney, but Lomachenko, there's only going to be so much that he can do as a guy that isn't really girthy like that of a Gervonta Tank Davis, and a guy that doesn't have that same one-shot knockout power, and a guy that is 35 years old, probably a natural 130-pounder, if not even a little bit lower. Now, he's grown a little bit more into the 135-pound weight division, of course, but at the end of the day, Lomachenko is not a natural 135-pounder. But the Shakur Stevenson fight, that'd be a very interesting fight. I'm just not sure if Lomachenko would have the stamina nor the age be on his side, but it'd be very interesting. And of course, Shakur, he's a great fighter in his own right.
Let's see how it all plays out. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Very interesting video, but as for Devin Haney possibly facing that of Regis Prograis, do I see Regis Prograis, do I see that fight happening next? More than likely not. I think it would be very interesting. But I think that if you're Devin Haney's promoter, that you don't really want him fighting someone like a Regis Prograis next. Why would you? Especially if you're Bob Arum and Devin Haney is with Top Rank. You have so many potential big fights. At least possibly, you could possibly go with, that of Shakur Stevenson, which is a fight that I see much more likely happening before that of the Regis Prograis fight. Why would you want to put Devin Haney in the ring with somebody that, once again, could be a potential buzzsaw at that of a higher weight division, and someone that does not have the same star appeal as that of Shakur Stevenson or Gervonta Tank Davis? I just don't see that happening. So it is what it is. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. It's going to be very interesting to see where the 135-pound/140-pound divisions go from here. Going to be very, very interesting. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.